Hello, guys. My name is Petko, and this is Ratio Talks. Today, my guest is Adrian Tchaikovsky. He's an award-winning author of mind-bending speculative fiction. His stories explore intelligence, evolution, and the futures we might build. We're diving into world-building, science-soaked ideas, and what makes alien minds, and our own tick. Enjoy. Okay, Adrian, welcome.
Hello. Thank you very much.
How you been doing? So you've been in Bulgaria for how many days now?
About 5 days.
5 days?
Yes. So I've done 3 days at a convention in Pazarjik, if I'm pronouncing that correctly.
You are.
Oh, excellent. And yes, then I've been a couple of days here in Sofia, mostly at and around the book fair.
Okay, yeah. I have to say, I mean, I have to be careful with the compliments and everything and not just sound like a fanboy, but I just, very recently started reading your works, and I'm absolutely fascinated by the worlds that you're building, by the ways that you explore topics like intelligence and consciousness and animal sociology, like sociobiology and all of these things. And I just wanted to briefly start with congratulating you. I mean, you are really prolific and with a consistently good quality. So, on behalf of the readers of Bulgaria that are just discovering your works or are already into it, I just want to start with a big thank you. I'm having a great time reading your book. So, I really want to deep dive into your pick your brain on how are you doing all of this. Because what's impressive is, not only the world building, but the way that you, as I said, explore consciousness and animal behavior. I mean, it seems like a very, complex way to build the world, and the way you're doing it, it's very profound and interesting. So, I guess I really want to start with, what got you into thinking about animal intelligence, and how did you go about in exploring it and then turning it into, your work?
If I can, I'll jump in just on another note briefly because I have been forgetting this all day. But one thing I do want to say is, based on the reaction of Bulgarian readers, I think my translator for this series has obviously done a phenomenal job.
Oh, good. Yeah.
And so I just want to say, any work in translation is a partnership between the original writer and the translator. So, credit where credit's due. They've obviously done phenomenally because people have really related to the books. As far as my relation with animal cognition goes, I was a very weird kid.
I bet you were.
And I therefore I took as my people, as it were, the very weird creatures that most people don't like spiders and so forth. And I've always been interested in the aliens, in science fiction, in the robots, in the monsters, far more than the traditional heroes. I've always put myself in that place, trying to see the world from that point of view of the other was an interest to me from when I've been very, very young, and it's very obviously not gone away. I've had a reasonable sort of scientific education, which gives you a lot of interesting tools to try and approach writing from that perspective. I mean, did you want me to go into some details about how I would approach it, a spider or a?
Well, I mean, we will get to that. It's just, I have a certain curiosity whether it was, your scientific education that was the spark, or was it something very early in your childhood? Because we all know, children naturally curious. We all poke things around. To be honest, I probably wasn't, deep enough to ask myself, what it's like to be a bat, for example, or something like that. But I definitely relate to the fact that, all of these different life forms, like you mentioned, aliens, these are, fascinating in general, and many of us can actually relate to that. But the influence of science is really interesting to me. That enhanced, your interest, or it just informed it. Did you use it as a tool, or was it sort of a something that sparked it.
Yeah, the spark was definitely there from very early on. Although, I mean, in a way, it was a scientific spark. I used to absolutely devour nature documentary programs, David Attenborough, that kind of thing. Yes. So that was what I grew up on. So the idea of that sort of that examination of the natural world on that scientific level was with me right from my very earliest days. And then I had a science-based degree course. Didn't necessarily take me to the places I wanted it to do.
Was that zoology or
zoology and psychology? But it was at the end of the day, the content of the course wasn't particularly what I wanted. But on the back of that, I've done a lot of sort of personal research. I read papers. I keep in touch with the development in the field, especially of animal cognition. And in fact, so Children of Time was written because I had read some really fascinating research on spider behavior and cognition from Fiona Cross in New Zealand. And I wanted to run that thought experiment of, well, what if this spider became the dominant species on the planet? What if it became sort of fully sapient at a human level and developed a civilization? What would that look like? And the whole book is really just me exploring this idea and then having to put some humans in because you need the humans in the story. But
it's interesting how you used fiction to clarify an idea or to explore it. I think many scientists, because we meet quite a lot of scientists here at Ratio, actually probably a bit underestimate the power of literature to actually do that. Now I'm thinking of, it's not really a genre fiction, but for instance, Marcel Proust, when it comes to, studying cognition, memory, things like that, I think it's a very, very useful to look at it from this perspective. Are there any other influences when it comes to literature? Because I'm remembering the only person that I can actually compare you to was a French author called Bernard Werber. I don't know if you heard of him. He wrote a trilogy about ants and ant behavior.
Oh, no, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I've read at least the first one was translated into English, so that I have read. Yes.
So he's not that good of a writer, but he's also exploring like the interesting alien world of ants. So yeah, and fiction is really underestimated in this regard. But I'm really interested in you picked up spiders. My intuition will be to do something that you actually did in the Dogs of War, to explore something that is closer to us, like mammals. I mean, that's much easier to do than a freaking spider or an insect. I mean, why?
So I have three answers to this question. The first one, which is the very, very fancy literary answer, is there is a long-standing tradition of using insects and spiders and things like that as a mirror to human nature. So we have Kafka's Metamorphosis, we have Pelevin's Life of Insects, we have the insect play. There's definitely a sort of a literary subgenre, which I'm at least nominally in conversation with when I'm writing about spiders as sapient beings.
Right.
Beyond that, there is the kind of the less fancy but probably truer answer. Just I absolutely love insects, bugs, spiders, anything like that. To me, they're enormously sort of aesthetically pleasing. And I find them endlessly fascinating. And I think the fact that they are further away from us makes it a more intriguing exercise to think, well, what is it like to be a spider? I mean, dogs are fascinating as well. And again, it was scientific research on dog cognition that led to Dogs of War. But dogs have become weirdly, they're probably more like us cognitively than anything else because far more so than our closest evolutionary relatives, because we're the environment that they have adapted to. A spider is just it's untouched ground in a way. So it was really interesting to just think through that thought experiment. The third answer, other than the Pelevin, other than liking insects in general, is there's nothing in the world people hate more than spiders. If you post a picture of a spider on social media, someone will reply saying, "Oh, you've got to burn your house down now." So if I could write... I wanted to write a book about finding common ground with something very different to us, about empathy with the other. And if I could do that with spiders, if I could write a book where people by the end of the book are on the side of the spiders against the humans, as most people come out, as most of my readers do come out
I did
with,
as well, yeah.
then that was the big challenge. If you can do it with spiders, you can do it with anything.
Yeah, I mean, if you start with something so far away from us, and as you said, we find empathy in that, how can you not find empathy with all other living creatures? You know, basically, it expands our like moral like range. So
Yeah, I mean,
when we think about
anyone can
animals.
do cats and pandas and
Yeah,
monkeys.
it's easy. It's easy. It is so convincing, though, and I kept asking myself. I have no idea. I've read sociobiology by, I forgot his name. Tell me the name of the scientist, the father of sociobiology. He was an entomologist, a very famous. God damn it! It escaped my mind. No. An American dude. I forgot. I think he's dead by now. Anyways, I wanted to make a smart reference, but yeah, I completely forgot about that. But it is so tempting to anthropomorphize. You know, when you think about, as you said, it's like having an interaction with a dog. You know, trying to explain their behavior and all of that. I'm just wondering how much. How much of that, if you have to put a number of that on it or quantify it, how much would you say is in percentage? Let's say it's like something that you anthropomorphized or sort of imagined, or and how much is it like really based on science and research? Because I haven't done much of science and research study.
So, I mean, there's obviously an awful lot of speculation.
Yeah.
But what I hope is that it's all informed speculation. So the spider that you meet at the beginning of the book, which is, you know, just a regular non-uplifted spider, all of that information is directly drawn from the research by Fiona Cross. So, right. Which is an astonishing amount of cognitive capacity in a creature with basically not really a brain, with just a little knot of neurons. And so hopefully every step I have taken in the book, where the spider becomes more complex and larger and cognitively and socially more sophisticated, is a reasonable proposition as to where things might really go if this spider had a clear run of evolution to becoming that dominant species. The one area I'm basically doing sort of hand-wavy science fiction with is the period of time it's taking.
Right.
Because
yes.
I invent a virus which is accelerating the evolution, so it happens over 10,000 years rather than 100 million years, right. For example.
So would you imagine that if we actually had 100 million years, like these creatures will at some point develop complex societies? Because we know that evolution is not always about complexity, right? It's,
you can never say will. And one of the big leaps I'm making is the idea that they are sort of pushed into sociability. Because as the spider species, Portia labiata is a solitary species, which makes its level of sophistication that much more impressive. Yeah. But without some sort of social interaction, I think it's very difficult to see something becoming as, you know, reaching a kind of a human level of complexity, because social interaction seems to be a real sort of engine of cognitive development, because you have to interact with your own species in such a complex way. But there are social spiders.
There are social spiders.
Yes, there are, and more than that, it's evolved independently several times within spiders. So there are multiple different groups of social spider that aren't related. So it's not that wild a possibility. And other than that, I think hopefully everything I am proposing is grounded enough in where the spider is now that it could happen. You can never say that it will happen. Weirdly enough, I think the octopus speculation I do in the second book is probably even more grounded, because we know how incredibly adaptable octopus minds
They're
are.
terrifying, yeah.
Well, I mean, I would say wonderful, but then again,
No, they are wonderful. I mean, they're terrifying in a sense that I've read somewhere that the only reason why they're not the dominant species on planet Earth is their short lifespan, essentially.
the short lifespan, and there's also the fact they basically hate each other.
They're not that social.
They are the old, but we have also since, relatively recently, we found octopus communities. And they're communities that have come together because of an abundance of food, but it does mean that suddenly octopi are learning how to live with one another.
Right. Because they have abundance, they have nothing to share.
But they also, but they have to be neighbors at that point. So there is sort of an emerging octopus society in a couple of places on the seafloor.
Oh, wow.
And we've also found some species of octopus that are much longer lived and lay multiple clutches of eggs. So it's not neither of those things are absolute rules, and it does mean that an octopus species with one of those could evolve or develop the other one, and then you could get this long-lived social octopus species. And yes, at that point, one imagines they would accelerate towards some very, very complex ideas indeed. I mean, if you haven't read it, there is a book called The Mountain in the Sea by Ray Naylor, which came out a few years ago, which is an amazing near-future sort of sapient octopus book.
Oh, wow. Sapient octopus book. You don't eat octopi, do you?
No, I never really ate octopi. I don't eat squid anymore either. Which I've got to say, I did very much enjoy squid. So that is at least a modicum of sacrifice on my part.
Right.
But no, I appreciate I'm probably eating other things that are also entirely entitled to life.
Oh my
and
God,
also,
like pigs, for instance.
Yes, so
disturbingly intelligent. Yeah.
I will admit to being a bit of a hypocrite on this point and not having a particularly well-defined moral stance on it. But no, yes, I did give up on squid.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, we're probably going to have some pork in an hour. So yeah, makes us. I don't know what that makes us. The idea of uplifting is really interesting. I mean, you use it as a tool in your books, but having in mind the current developments in biotechnology, I'm thinking about CRISPR and other things. I mean, this more and more seems to. It seems like we're getting closer to this becoming a reality in the sense that we can develop tools to, affect different attributes of species, including intelligence. Although this is probably very complex because intelligence requires like much more complex probably intervention. What do you think about it? Do you find the idea of uplifting actually plausible, and do you find it ethical?
So. I mean, unfortunately, I think we're living in an era where almost anything being done at the cutting edge of technology is likely to be highly unethical because of the sort of people driving it. I think that if we're looking at plausibility, Dogs of War is probably my most plausible book because I think dogs are where it would be done first. I think that it's easier to do dogs than primates.
Why is that?
Just logistically keeping... just the laboratory conditions required. I think primates are still relatively demanding. And I think
simplicity of maintenance. I thought it's more of the fact that we, as you said, dogs are more socialized to us. I mean, we essentially evolved together.
I think that you can essentially you can probably test dogs a lot more easily than you can test primates. You can work out what you're doing. You can probably go through a lot more dogs economically than you can. I mean, this is the thing buried at the back of Dogs of War. Is just like the number of dogs you have to go through to get Rex.
Yeah.
Which means that yes, ethicality has probably gone out of the window at that point. But I think that no one is going to be running off uplift experiments with spiders anytime soon. I do wonder what people might do with ants.
Yeah.
Because one of the things we're seeing in other tech areas is like the little robot swarms that are capable of doing really complex tasks eventually once they've kind of bumbled their way around them for a little while. Ants do a lot of stuff already. And ants do a lot of stuff that could be quite useful to us, including, weirdly, they could kind of micromanage other living systems for us because that's a thing they do naturally. They have very, very complex symbiotic and domesticating relationships with other species. So you could probably hack an ant nest with the right kind of chemical signals, and then use ants to do all sorts of other stuff. It's almost it's the equivalent of having one of those mechanical claws that you're using with dangerous materials.
Right.
But it's an ant's nest that is doing stuff for you, and you can just if you need them to just do something else, you work out what pattern of chemical signals would reprogram your ants, and that feels like. I mean, I kind of doubt anyone is working on that, whereas I suspect people probably are working on the dog thing.
Yeah.
But I do feel that might be an interesting direction for research to go.
Don't give them ideas, because while you were speaking, it sounded more and more terrifying. I'm not imagining somebody using that, to improve, to do like more green agriculture or something like that. I'm thinking war all the time.
I mean, everything always goes to war, and it's worth noting that Rossum's Universal Robots.
Yeah.
Obviously, one of the great original science fiction texts, one of the great robot sort of uprising plays, originally. It's after they turn them into soldiers that the uprising happens.
Yeah.
So I do rather wonder that if you were to, say, use your amazing ant sort of tool for war, then the great ant revolution might be right around the corner. But, talking about green agriculture, if you could have programmable ants, what an amazing green sort of replacement for pesticides that would be.
Oh my God, yes.
Honestly, and I wrote a story called Charlie's Ant a while ago, basically where you have a setup where you have ant fields managed by sort of cybernetic ants nests, and the ants are just kind of getting on with things. And in this particular story, the rest of human society is completely collapsed, but the ants are still doing their farming stuff, which is one advantage of using a living system rather than making machines to do it, because living systems are self-repairing and self-sustaining.
You use ants for computation.
The spiders do, yes.
Talk a little bit about that. How did you go about this idea?
Well, this is just one of those things that comes up when you're writing. So that was not part of the original plan, which seems amazing to me now because it's such a huge part of the series. Yeah. But originally, you have on this world, the spiders have been uplifted and are evolving through this virus. But the virus has also affected a number of other species, one of which is the ants. And the ants aren't sapient, but they become essentially an enormously sophisticated machine that can experiment and learn by trial and error, and is an existential threat to the spiders because the ants are just spreading across the world, and the spiders are able to essentially chemically domesticate the ants, and then they can find ways of using them. And one of the ways they use them is they make ant colonies into their computer operating system. Initially, they are just, as I was talking about, using chemical signals to get the ants to do things. And then they work out that actually, if you set the ants up with a chemical operating system, Ant OS, you can then get an individual ant nest to do all sorts of very complicated things, and whatever you need it to do, you can put in the relevant commands, and the ants will do it. And then that becomes the basis of their advanced technology, so that even when they are sort of doing the space race phase of their development, everything is running on ants.
Yeah, that was absolutely fascinating. Just an incredible idea. And it totally made sense. I mean, you're thinking of ants like a separate nodes or bits, of the whole computational system. It just made sense. I was on the side of the ants initially when they started fighting because, I did mention to you, like Bernard Werber initially, that the trilogy of ants, I have like a deep sympathy towards them. But yeah, eventually they lost. They got hacked. But it was really interesting when you said that if if you uplift a species, it might, get some ideas, as you said, for an uprising or something like that. That's essentially, that's an idea that you actually explore in The Dogs of War, if I'm not mistaken, right? I mean, I still haven't read it, but I've read about it.
Yes, so in Dogs of War, which is a much nearer future book, after a kind of a disastrous attempt at sort of automating war with robots goes very badly wrong, the solution that researchers settle on is, well, you uplift a dog and you give it a lot of cybernetic enhancement, and then you have this incredibly loyal, obedient, phenomenally sort of fearsome soldier. Because at that point the dog's about 9 feet tall and very bulked out, and it's got guns mounted on its shoulders and things like that. And of course, the big thing you can do with a 9 foot tall dog with guns on its shoulders is disown it after it's done war crimes for you. Which is very much what people will be doing with autonomous drones, for example. It's wiped out a civilian centre. So, obviously there was something wrong with the algorithm. We're all very sorry. And in this case, it's, bad dog. You can have the dog destroyed in that case. And obviously, great tragedy and so forth. And it means that the people giving the orders have that distance between them and the things that they are making happen.
Yeah, we are already doing this.
Because as the moment you have something in between you and the act that is theoretically autonomous, even if technically it's only ever going to be doing what you're telling it to do, then you can get away scot-free.
Yeah.
And in the book, what happens is it's mostly told from the point of view of Rex, the dog, who does not understand that he is doing war crimes. He just thinks he's being a good dog because he's doing what he's told.
Yeah.
And then he gets cut off from the chain of command and has to start making moral and ethical decisions on his own. And he has some squad mates to help him. There is Honey, who is a bear, and there is Dragon, who is a lizard, and there is Bees, who is a swarm of bees. And the four of them basically go rogue and become...
Careful with the spoilers.
Yeah. And it goes on from there.
Yeah.
I will say, if anyone, it's not translated into Bulgarian yet.
Yeah.
But if anyone has the English reading and would like to pick up a science fiction book of mine, I usually do say Dogs of War.
Right.
Mostly because I think this is the book where not only the concept but the character voice is absolutely nailed, and it's because the character is the concept. It's being told from the point of view of the experimental technology.
Right. That then we see later on in the other books, right? Or no?
This was the year after Children of Time.
Okay. I don't know, just fascinating things. I've always imagined since I was a child that while I was looking at ants, and then I think what was this movie called? Star Warriors? No, oh come on.
Starship Troopers.
Starship Troopers, yes, that was like fascinating 90s flick. I from then on, probably influenced by these things, I always imagined that alien civilizations will definitely work like ants or bees. They have to be very social. They don't have. Having an individuality doesn't always help. I don't know how this worked out for human civilization. I guess we're well balanced between a self-interest and communal one.
Well, it's worth noting ants don't work the way we think ants work.
Oh.
Well, social insects don't. So social insects don't get told what to do by queen. The queen is there to produce more insects, but she has no command role. Social insects, so the way an ant hive makes a decision is every ant basically weighs in. So if the decision is, say, right, where are we going to go to forage? Ants will scout out, find out what's out there. An ant will come back saying, basically with the chemical equivalent, this is a good place. And another ant will say, that is a good place. And eventually a majority will be reached. And then the whole ant nest will say, right, we're going over here.
Oh,
but
wow.
it is this weirdly democratic process.
Yeah, it's basically the idea they're following their own self-interest and...
Yeah, but it is a bottom-up thing. So there is a lot more individuality to ants and to any kind of social arthropod than was previously thought. And there's certainly not this sort of medieval monarchy idea which people have tended to popularize.
Yeah, so it's not a totalitarian system, you know, that...
Yeah.
Oh, it's not.
It's this weird. I mean, weirdly, it's almost kind of like this idealized selfless communism of ants,
Right?
rather than monarchism.
Right. My God, you're definitely doing some good PR here for these very much misunderstood creatures. I understand why you got tempted by octopi. They are fascinating by the distributed intelligence neural system. The way they think. But when I started the second book, I was like, why didn't he go with dolphins, for example? It's like dolphins are again easier to explore. Is it again that you wanted to try, the harder species?
I think I like octopi more than dolphins. There's that personal element, but also uplifted dolphins are a science fiction staple. David Brin,
David Brin,
who of course he gets name checked at the space station in the first book because he's very much the person who popularized uplifting in the fiction. He's done dolphins as well as various other sort of mammal species. So I'm always looking for the thing that hasn't been done before. And I suspect probably I'm not the first person to do octopuses, but I couldn't immediately bring something to mind. And they're kind of cognitively a bigger challenge to write about. So that was the other thing. Certainly in this series in particular, if I'm going to do a new book on it, I want to be able to do something that hasn't been done before.
So they were more challenging than the spiders. Is that what you're saying?
There is also in Children of Memory, in Children of Ruin, there is also a completely alien intelligence in that book as well. But the octopuses were so much more work. The way that our best understanding of octopuses is they have a central brain.
Yeah.
It's shaped like a donut, bizarrely, because the esophagus that they eat through just go through the middle of it for no readily explicable reason. And then each arm has its own brain. And a certain amount of the decision-making and computation is going on in the individual brains of the arms. So the arms are sort of semi-independent. And the way I characterize this in the book is that the octopus decides what it wants to happen, and then the arms get together and decide how that is going to work. And then as the octopus gets uplifted into something more complicated, you have a situation where the conscious part of the octopus is almost what we would think of as the id. It's the desire and the emotion. So they are this very weird, undisciplined, impulsive creature, but subconsciously they are doing this vast amount of very careful calculation. So they have a technology, but they don't know how it works because the ability to operate the machinery and so forth is all held within the arms. And trying to write from that point of view almost drove me completely insane.
Yeah, it sounds completely insane. Does the process of thinking about different type of animal intelligences is how does that actually help you better understand human consciousness and how we are related? Basically, what I'm saying is does it help you define more? The flexibility of human intelligence and its limitations when you're studying other animals?
Yes, and one of the really useful things it does is it makes you realize a lot of the assumptions we make about how our minds work. So, looking at with the octopuses, so we think we have a concrete self.
Yes.
We think, well, this is the sort of person I am. These are my stats on the character sheets. That sort of, and I will always be reacting in a certain way because those are my values. And actually, depending on how tired you are, how hungry you are, how what ideas you've recently taken on board from a television show, you are going to react differently to the same situation. So that what we think of as this little nutshell of self is the cloud of possibilities that we range around depending on our mental state. So in that way, we're a lot less this solitary entity and a lot more this sort of cloud of possible selves. Also, the way I was saying about an ant nest making decisions, there's a lot of evidence to suggest that actually a lot of our own decision-making happens among the neurons like that. You get a majority of neurons, and then that becomes the decision we've made. But because of the way human consciousness works, we then find a reason for why we have done the thing, which is not necessarily actually true. And for example, one way I found this enormously helpful in my own human cognition is so I suffer from depression quite a lot, and one of the things that tends to happen is that if you are depressed, you find an external reason of, well, what is making me depressed?
Right.
And actually, if you suffer from depression, it tends to be an internal thing. You go through a cycle. There is a sort of a chemical balance in your brain. You'll go through a depressed period, no matter what is going on outside. So trying to see it as a problem imposed on you is entirely unhelpful in dealing with it. And getting that as an understanding of well, I feel bad. I'm just going through that cycle, and it will improve, has been the most helpful thing for me, just to manage my own sort of mental state.
Yeah, and I think it's extremely important that other people also understand where depression is coming from, because it's like, hey, I mean, everything's all right with the world around you. How come you feel like that?
Or even if everything is very bad in the world around you, which seems unfortunately to be more likely these days, that's still not necessarily the reason you yourself are depressed.
That's right. That's right. I know, it's interesting. And when you explore like individual consciousness in different species, but what's also interesting is like the social structures that you create around them. So I would say most of them are based on, as you said, like on scientific hooks, on things that we already know, but you're probably extrapolating from there to make the society much more complex. So how do you go about that? How do you extrapolate and create a civilization without, again, being tempted and thinking in human terms?
So I'm always running a thought experiment with this sort of book. So you see what you're starting with. You've got your starting species. This is the way it experiences the world. This is the way it relates to others of its own species or its environment. And you just build out from that in small steps. And I guess the key thing is that you follow the data. Because if you decide, well, obviously I want them to be able to do this or to be able to do that, at that point, that you will be guiding them towards probably a much more human-like sort of cognitive setup, a human-like social setup. But if you just follow the data, all right, assuming I want these spiders to be social. So again, that is a human assumption I'm making, because otherwise they're not going to have a civilization particularly.
Yeah.
How does that society going to work? And working from what we know of spiders and how they relate to each other. So in this case, you end up with a spider society that is almost entirely female dominated, because female spiders are basically bigger and more aggressive in general than male spiders. You have very, very complex sort of gender politics between the male and female spiders, because it's like, a few generations back, the females used to eat the males, and that was just kind of girls being girls, so to speak. And so
there's a fight for emancipation from the males, you know, like we've seen that.
And then thinking about, all right, so where does their technology go? And one of the things I'm kind of proudest of in a way is the spider technology is derived very much from their sensory abilities. They have a chemosense that we don't have. That means they can do a lot of chemistry. They can use silk to make containers very easily. So they have a lot of tools at their disposal from a very early stage. They end up getting into space without ever inventing the wheel or using fire.
Yes, oh my God, yeah, that was incredible. Yeah.
And again, I don't know necessarily whether any of this will work, but I've tried. It's as plausible as I can make it, and I hopefully set out my working step by step as the book goes on, because we follow them over sort of thousands of years of their society changing.
Yeah, I gotta say, when I was reading that, I never got it into a point in which I said, okay, that's just simply ridiculous, because it made sense. I mean, it's kind of obvious that when you reach a limitation of like our current understanding of how things work, like you don't go beyond that. That's quite visible, and that's what makes it like really, really plausible. So when you create an alien, again, I keep coming back to this idea of anthropomorphizing, because I have no idea how people are not doing that all the time. Which like you imagine an alien that is not based on like biological form that we know of. What are the things that you that you find necessary to remove from from what we know about humans. I mean, like do you remove like cognitive biases, for example? Do you remove emotions? Do you remove the things that are making us human in order to make a more plausible alien? Or from the point of view of evolution, these are things that we should actually expect?
So what I do, I will, if I'm working with something truly alien, I'll strip back and look at what the conditions are that it's evolved under.
Right.
And again, a lot
so
of that.
You create a planet first.
Yes, because
world.
You need to know where something has come from, because that will give you the pressures and the priorities that it will evolve to endure or exploit or live with.
Yeah.
And I mean, I have a book out this year called Shroud, which is probably my most alien book, and there I've developed. There's a world it's my least Earth-like world. It's got very high pressure. It's very cold. It's pitch dark because it's got a very dense, murky atmosphere. It's sort of way out in the middle of its own solar system, sort of Jupiter ways. And yet you've got this very complex ecology that's evolved there, but it's evolved with a completely different sort of sensory bias. So in this case, everything generates electromagnetic waves and both communicates and senses using these waves, which gives you a very, very different outlook, so to speak, on your world. And and a lot of the book is about the fact that when humans encounter this life, there is some of this life which is very sophisticated, but neither side has the faintest idea what the other one is, because their frame of reference is so different. But in that case, the life on Shroud is just built up step by step from, right, what are our starting conditions? What would be the early life like? What would be the pressures on it? What would be your great moments of sort of evolutionary change? So, for example, in this case, the evolution of sonar is a huge change, and very shortly after that, anything that isn't able to use sonar is getting out evolved very quickly. And then you have the evolution of this sort of electromagnetic sense, which supersedes that. And you get little passages throughout the book where I'm guiding you through the evolution from a particular perspective in the book. Again, just really to show the working, because obviously I've done a lot of work on this. I want to be able to show it off. But whilst also making it relevant to the plot, because otherwise my editors would make me cut it. But it's for me, it's never about stripping away particular human aspect. It's running the experiment again from the start and seeing if those aspects feel like they would arise.
Based on the conditions. Yeah.
Based on the conditions, and with each, so you work. It's you're building a kind of a tower, really. So each floor is constrained by what you have built on the previous floor.
Yeah.
And so you do get this sort of trajectory to your evolution, even though you're working from you start off from this very open thought experiment. I mean, I think this is an Earth example, not an alien example. My best book for this is probably Doors of Eden.
Doors of Eden.
Yes. So in that, it's a parallel worlds book, but in each of the worlds, evolution on Earth has gone down a different road and ends up with a different dominant species at the time when on our world humans are in the driving seat. And so I have these passages throughout the book just talking through each world and its sort of evolutionary path and what ends up on top. And in some cases you have a species which is enormously intelligent but never developed a technological civilization or feels the need to. In other cases you have species that wipe themselves out or that don't survive the Permian mass extinction. And it's each little sort of intermission chapter is its own complete sort of evolutionary fable about what happens in this particular world.
It's fantastic.
Honestly, it's one of my favorites of my books, purely for that, just going completely mad on that sort of rerunning evolution.
Yeah, I mean this world building part of like every book that's probably like my most favorite, part of it, because the explaining it. I was just keep on thinking, if I have to give my sons a book to understand evolution, that's not Darwin. That's something like that.
Thank you.
Yeah, because it does shows like the fundamental mechanisms of change, and adaptation and all that. It's really fascinating. Do you use consultants in your work?
I do because
it's a crazy amount of work, like.
One of the really important things about researching consultants is knowing what you don't know,
right.
Which is surprisingly hard to do because we make a lot of assumptions that we don't necessarily examine. But with Children of Time, for example, I went down to the Natural History Museum and spent a day talking to the entomology department about the logistical problems of having a very big spider.
Right.
And just as a sideline from that conversation, I got the solution to 3 or 4 other completely separate problems in the book, just from the sort of thing they were talking about.
Huh.
And for Shroud, which I mentioned, I got together with William Baines, who was a planetary biochemist, I think, at Cambridge University, who is involved in the potential life on Venus research.
Right.
And basically, I had a long chat with him about, well, how would this world work if what sort of parameters can I have and life is still sort of plausible, and then sent it over to him when I'd written a big chunk of sort of world building, and he was able to send me back saying, no, this is wrong and that's wrong. And
that's great. Yeah.
So especially if I can actually find someone who is happy to talk through things for me. And even weird, so in Children of Ruin, the octopi have spaceships, and the spaceships are full of water.
Yeah, like aquariums,
which does interesting things to things like momentum. Because suddenly it's 10 times as heavy as a spaceship that just had air in it. So I had to find someone to talk to about that. Weirdly, I found a submarine designer, which you'd think would be exactly the opposite problems.
Yeah.
But yes, there's a chap called Nick Bradbeer who is enormously useful and who continues to be kind of one of my sort of special science team when I need to talk about engineering problems.
That's fascinating. Yeah. Oh my God. It's just, like how many books do you have in your mind? I mean, what's interesting that you just like quickly mentioned that there are problems that arise while you're writing, and you have to figure it out on the move. So you don't have everything figured out from the get-go.
I don't. I mean, what's
your process there?
What I try and do is plan things out enough before I start writing that I know where the problems will be. And then I can start casting around for someone to help. Sometimes, though, that doesn't happen. You get to a point in the book and realize I don't actually know what I'm doing with this. And at that point, ideally, you can just keep writing some bits and put that problem off until you can find the relevant research. But the most efficient way is certainly working out those areas of ignorance ahead of time.
Yeah.
So that by the time I sit down to write, I've got all of that planned out.
Is it easy for you to write? Or is it hard work?
I find it the most enjoyable thing in the world. I know that
it's not a grind for you.
I mean, I know we are supposed to be tormented artists and suffer and so forth, but I absolutely love it. It's just the especially that world building stage of the raw creation of things is just absolutely candy to me, basically. I mean, and I think that's why I write as much as I do. It's because I really enjoy it, and that's possibly the recipe to getting a lot written is just find the writing process, find the part of the writing process in you that is just really fun, and make that the cornerstone of how you write.
So this is a way, actually, that it's not only pleasurable for you, it gives you like immense intellectual pleasure. It's also a way for you to explore different ideas that are in your mind right now. So what is in your mind right now? Because I mean, I can tell you, and you already know, everybody's obsessed about AI. This is something that you are actually covering a bit, in your book. There is some AI intelligence in there. Are you planning to write something about that? Are you bored by AI? Because I'm definitely getting there.
So what we tend to talk about right now under the heading of AI is not AI. Not a science fiction. I mean, that kind of generative AI, large language model thing is absolutely something I am enormously frustrated with, not least because I think it's getting in the way of genuine artificial intelligence research, research toward a generative...
You think it's the wrong way to approach it?
Yeah, because there's nothing at the heart of a generative process. It is basically a writer term for it has been spicy autocorrect.
Yeah.
It is a process by which it will find a likely thing from its library to follow up, or to answer your query, or to follow up on your prompt.
Right. Yeah.
But there's nothing conscious there, no matter how much they will try and sell it as that, which means that you can't, I think, get to general AI, i.e. an actual thinking, sapient system that has a level of awareness from where we are now. And the more we are investing in this sort of weird Lego engine, Lego language engine, the more money is not going to genuine artificial intelligence research.
Not that I want to defend them because I hate them all, but you started with a neural network, right? I mean, some people say that consciousness is an emerging property of this neural network. So why do you find it so improbable that this basic architecture will actually work? Because we don't see it in nature.
Because I don't think it's even as complex as a neural network. What's actually going on is you give it a vast amount of plagiarized and pirated data, and you have a system that is very good at two things. It's very, very good at essentially pattern recognition.
Right.
And pattern recognition is absolutely a part of consciousness, but it's a part of consciousness. It's not the base of consciousness. It's not where consciousness springs from. It's a part of a complex system. Yeah, but it's not the toolbox. It's a spanner.
So I'm going to put you on a spot here and make it difficult for you. You talked about building this tower. Describing the evolutionary process of a being. If you do the same thing about AI, how would you go about that?
So I mean,
how would you build this AI?
I don't think I know enough about the actuals to. I think that I would probably attempt to study the only sapient systems we genuinely know exist, which is to say living ones.
Yeah.
Honestly. I think that... I mean, here's the other thing. The other thing that large language models especially have been very, very heavily designed to do is essentially be the front man. Right. They are very good at producing outputs that feel like they come from humans. Although it's worth noting that humans are very, very good at reading any kind of output as being a human-like output. See the ELIZA sort of psychotherapy studies from way back in the day. I think that the focus on... I think at some point in this research, it very much feels like someone has thought, well, making a machine that thinks is really hard, and we don't seem to be getting anywhere with it. But making a machine that feels like it's thinking is very easy.
Yeah.
And I think that's the point where it divorces from useful general AI research.
Now they're just bullshitting us, so that's what you're saying.
They're making a very, very good ELIZA.
Yeah.
And it is a genuinely very good ELIZA. It is, creepily good. People, and especially it's rather than ELIZA being kind of a therapist that might challenge you, in this case, it's ELIZA as being this enabling demon on your shoulder telling you that everything you say and think is wonderful, and that you don't really have to change or try or do anything. So it's kind of like this weirdly toxic version of ELIZA, but that at the end of the day, it's no more sentient than a Tamagotchi.
Yeah.
It's just a lot better at making us think it is.
I wish more people think about, AI the way that you do. I don't think that many people understand how much of that is just marketing, man? I mean, the moment I see their faces and they start talking about, it's like, and they're even enforcing fears to us in order to believe their marketing stuff. It's like, oh my God, you know, it's a Paul Altman. No, not Paul. What was his name?
Altman?
Sam Altman. Yeah, he comes out and he says, we need to regulate that thing. And I always have the feeling that he's saying that just to make us believe that what he's doing is actually.
I mean, given how I think global military is investing in AI at the moment, I think every time someone comes up and says, "Oh, this AI, we've got to regulate it. It might destroy the world," there is a 5-star general saying, "Destroy the world, you say?
Yes.
Have some money."
That's right. Okay, so what are you working on right now, and what is it that you actually want to do with your life? Is there something else?
I mean, I am doing what I want to do with my life.
That's
honestly,
it, yeah.
I am absolutely.
You're not picking up any gardening, anything like.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, in fact, our gardening is very kind of left alone sort of garden because it's for the insects, you know. It's
Right. It has to be more natural.
That's
and
my
more,
excuse.
And more.
So I've got the 4th book in this series in English coming out next year, Children of Strife, which we will finally get to see the mantis shrimps that I keep promising.
Oh my God.
And also that year, I think we're getting Children of Memory in Bulgarian as well.
Yes, terrific.
Other than that, what have I got coming up? I have got my fantasy series, The Tyrant Philosophers, is going on. Another couple of books have been written and delivered on that one. And you know, if people do want to read my fantasy, that is the series I'm having probably the most fun writing at the moment. Also, I've got for the year after next a very weird book about cloned monks in space.
Oh my God, you go everywhere. It's a mess. It's a mess, but it's a wonderful mess. Yeah, great. Well, Adrian, thank you very much for taking the time. I know it's been a busy week for you. You're probably exhausted. These are the books. Find them in Bulgarian. By the way, kudos for mentioning the translator. You know, not many people give credit to what translation actually is. You know, and how difficult it is.
Yeah, and I don't as much as I should.
Yeah, yeah. So it's a wonderful translation. Get the book. It's an amazing world that will intellectually stimulate you, terrify you, and do a bunch of other things with you guys. So, thank you very much, Adrian. It was really a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.